So welcome everybody, and we're going to have a little less, as Mayor Nichols was hinting, we're going to have a little less PowerPointing and a little more talking today, which I think will be welcomed by everyone as well as some special guests. But I'll let our co-chairs go over the agenda. Just the front end reminder I wanted to share with folks is one that's same as every time, and then just a little bit of an additional piece. We encourage everyone to please utilize the digital hand raising function for questions. This is going to be a particularly difficult one because it is very dialogue oriented, lots of time for discussion. But using the digital hand instead of the chat box so that everybody can hear the questions and engage in the conversation. It's also just more humanizing to hear faces, to hear voices and see faces. And then as you're out and about in the community talking to folks, people have questions. Obviously, any of us at SDOT are available directly to all of you for questions, comments at all moments in time. And I hope that it's felt that way. But we also have a very active inbox for general public feedback, questions, comments. West Seattle Bridge at seattle.gov. We do, when we're out and about in the community, get asked on a regular basis, what's a great way to get some feedback? And we try and be out on the front line so we can directly answer questions. But as things come to you and, it doesn't seem like something you feel comfortable answering or want to direct them to us, where we do get back to everybody, West Seattle Bridge at seattle.gov is a great place to direct questions, and we're happy to engage with folks there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our co-chairs, Mayor Nichols, to get us going.
So I sent everyone an email over the weekend. I hope that you got it. The only person who didn't get it, I think, might be Diane Sosney. Diane, the SEIU server at least bounced it back to me once. So if you did not get an email from me over the weekend, please send me an email that I can use to bring you up to date. We've asked everyone after today's meeting by close of business tomorrow to share with us, with Paulina and I, your thoughts on what you would like the mayor to keep in mind as she's making this important decision. You'll get some chance to do that today orally, but we wanted also to have it in writing so that when we sit with the mayor virtually or however it's going to happen, we will be able to share the breadth of thinking that members of the task force have. So with that, Paulina, over to you.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. Very glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming back to our meetings and for all the feedback that majority of you have sent, obviously for your commitment. We know that we are at a critical time right now of decisions. So the time that you're giving, the learning that you're putting into all these efforts, really appreciate it. Today, as Greg said, we will be having interactive meeting, going through the overview. We would have some questions and answers from our technical advisory panel. So we wanted to have this week, as you may remember, to continue looking into the cost-benefit analysis, bringing all those questions and comments back to us, or clarifications that we needed. So we allow this extra week to be looking into this long document. So hopefully you have your questions. We have the key people today answering. We'll also be joined by Mayor Durkins, that she has prioritized to come today as a way to directly hear from you. So we will be going through some of your reflections about what is important to you prior to this decision, getting some feedback from you on the repair replace. Also, it's a great opportunity to hear directly from you. But we do want to encourage as well, if you haven't done it yet, we put the deadline tomorrow on that letter because we wanted you to have the perspective of today's meeting to send your written comments. But as Greg said, this is a good opportunity to reflect your own voice and your stakeholders and what is important to you prior to this decision. So the meeting with Mayor, with Greg and myself have not been established yet. So it's important that we hear from you and we bring all this information. So it would be very interactive. We won't be splitting into groups, but hopefully we will make it a way so we can hear directly from community members and from the rest of our community task force members. With that, I'm going to give it back to Greg.
Thank you, Paulina. We've got about 20 minutes before the mayor is expected to join us. And when she does, we'll obviously acknowledge her, and she's going to make a few remarks, and then we're going to have the opportunity to continue our conversation about the repair, replacement, concerns, risks, and the like. But at this point, we have Heather Marks, our fearless leader, Greg Izzo, who is the person responsible for bringing things in on time, on budget, and lasting for 75 to 100 years. Matt Donahoe, who owns the bridge and takes that responsibility very seriously. And Barbara Moffett, one of the co-chairs of our Technical Advisory Committee, has joined us fresh off of vacation. So Barbara, thank you for making time for this meeting. And what we get the opportunity to do now that we've had over a week to absorb the cost-benefit analysis is ask any questions, share any thoughts that you have regarding the cost-benefit analysis and kind of where you think it leads us in terms of a recommendation or advice to the mayor. So I know that a number of people have been very curious about the rapid response, rapid replacement option that cuts a couple of years off of the amount of time before we're reconnected. So I'm going to lead off with a question to Barbara. Barbara, has the TAP been able to look at the rapid replacement concept? How should we think of it? Should we think of it as a brand new idea, or is it a subset of one of the options that's already been looked at in the cost-benefit analysis? And is it technically feasible to deliver a quality project on this kind of schedule?
Thank you, Mayor Nichols. It's an exciting concept. The TAP has had an in-depth discussion with HNTB, who has proposed the rapid replacement concept. So we have looked at it. Obviously, it is not fully designed yet. And so we are looking at the same level of detail about that the CTF has had. And what we can say with respect to the replacement concept is that it should be considered a subset of what you're seeing as alternative 4 in the CBA. So as you are aware, the CBA is a very rough order of magnitude with respect to cost. It has not been costed precisely. And so with respect to what is included in the CBA, the main difference is that there's a schedule impact that would be advancing that more than what is in the CBA. But for overall purposes, you could consider that as an idea that could be covered by alternative 4. So it is not something that's new. I've heard it said, well, is that a 4B? Is that a 4C? Questions like that. And what I would respond to is that it can be part of a subset. As you know, the CBA is not intended to choose a final option to go straight into final design with. It goes next to the type, size, and location study, at which point the costs are more fully vetted. The constructability, the erection, the geotechnical, all of that will be fleshed out in more detail within a type, size, and location study. With respect to feasibility, it's an exciting idea. We look, and there are, in any type of a replacement, you are going to have challenges. There are definitely challenges, but that's all part of what was considered in the CBA with respect to risks. Alternative 4 had risks identified. These are unique risks with a unique type of proposal, but it's nothing that the TAP has seen that would be unfeasible to do at this time. That's kind of one of those non-positives, but a non-negative as well, in that we are at the very early stages, and looking at it, it is a very nice looking structure. And we do believe that it's something that should be looked at in further detail as part of TSNL if a replacement option rather than repair is chosen.
And are the schedule implications reasonable?
The schedule implications as to an exact date, it's too early to say, but yes, I will say that accelerated bridge construction, accelerated superstructure replacement is a very well-known, well-identified thing that is done in bridge construction, and it could be advanced. As to an exact date when it would be delivered, I don't know that enough has been done to figure out exactly yet what it's a concept only, but it would definitely, with an accelerated replacement, shave time off of the schedule that was originally included in the CBA.
Great, thank you. So you have the hand raising thing on your whatever it's called. And I'll also look to see if there are folks who are trying to get attention on the screen. We've got a few minutes to ask Heather and Greg and Matt and Barbara some questions coming out of your review of the CBA, or if you've got some thoughts based on your review. Anne, you sent me an email with a question. Why don't you?
Hi. Yes, I did send one. So I read the CBA. It was exciting to read. I did fall asleep reading it one night, but I did finish it. And there was only one spot where I went, wow, that's really interesting. And it was on page 59. And it says the CBA has shown that minimizing the duration of immediate closures is far more important than future closures based on the assumption of light rail availability after 2032. And so I read that and I went, wow, well then it's repair. And then we'll worry about replacement later. And so I'm wondering, so I know that there was an attempt to sort of, to identify the impacts on the region for freight and for time spent in cars and dollars lost. But I didn't get the impression that the CBA had fully captured the cost to citizens or potential property value devaluations or those kinds of things. And so I'm wondering, based on this statement, were those dollars that are missing from the CBA taken into account there, or what's driving that statement?
Heather, do you want to delegate that one?
Yeah. I don't know how to begin to answer that. Greg or Matt, do you have a perspective there? I hope.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Hi, everybody. This is Greg Izzo, program manager. I'm going back to that page 59. And if you don't mind, would you mind? I could read through it again, but I'm just trying to get to your point of what was considered and what wasn't considered for costs. And
so my question, so the CBA is stating that we should minimize the closure time, which would point to a repair. And so what I'm looking at is that the Alt 2 comes in lower than Alt 4 overall when you look at the CBA. So why is that the case if the CBA conclusion is that we should limit the amount of time that it's closed?
Primarily, I believe what's happening there is the fact that there's going to be a 2 sequence as part of alternative 2. There's going to be more impact in that there's going to be 2 shutdowns, and the fact that it also includes a full replacement of the bridge in year 2060. And I believe that is why you're seeing, and you're right in that time seems to be the most important factor in all of this of getting traffic restored quickly. But I think if we look at the overall life cycle, which the CBA intends to do, after it factors in alternative 2's downsides, which is really the fact that we have to come back again and replace it within an uncertain time frame, and as well as the fact that the total life cycle cost at the end really comes closer to alternative 4. When you look at the end life cycle costs, it quite closes the gap there. So I think the disruption overall as associated with alternative 2 is why you're seeing that not come out as far as ahead as you think it might be, because you're right, it is the fastest way to restore traffic. However, it's kind of offset by the fact of the full life cycle, which is giving it some negative points on having to go back and replace the full structure anyway in 2060.
I think
Right.
Barbara had something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add on to that is that also noting, and I'm looking at the page right now, is that is one component of the CBA. And I think it's really important to realize that it is, if you say it's the most important, it's still not the only component. And I think it's critical for us to recognize that there are a lot of things that go together. So can repair be faster than a rapid replacement? Now that we have a rapid replacement in there, that time frame does come closer together, as mentioned. But it's only one component, and there's also the risk component, and there's also other components, and there's the seismic and the constructability and the operations and maintenance. So there's all these other attributes we looked at. And so while this is a very important one, I would say it's not the sole one. And that's why it's not an intuitive, oh, let's just go repair this. We have to take all of those things. Right. And SDOT has a whole bunch of input that's going in together for that.
And I think it's a wonderful question, and it does get to, I think, the crux many of us have faced in going down the CBA rabbit hole, is that, if you bracket one section of this, it does seem to say a lot about one thing and one way in a certain direction. But even in that same paragraph, in that same little bullet point here on 59, it says, as stated, the CBA does not quantify the cost of socioeconomic impacts, to its fullest extent, which touches on exactly what you were saying, Ann. There's a lot of additional considerations about what costs look like in the broadest definition down the road. And then it concludes that section by saying, this is exacerbated when considering opportunity costs with time, and WSP recommends that this be explored in depth in future studies. So it's a lot of things to unpack there. And so it's always important to, we can zoom in, but then broaden back out the aperture.
And thank you for bringing up the rest of that, because that was sort of what got me going on the question about what is and isn't quantified in dollars, because the dollars to individual citizens who live in West Seattle and in South Park and Georgetown is, that's important money too. That's important time too. And it's not just looking at, does the thing cost more overall if we replace it later? It's what is the value of us being able to maintain our community and our business in the area, and allow T5 to do their, the T5 thing's a big thing too. There's a lot that is at stake with having to wait an extended period. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Dan Austin, to be followed by Deb Barker.
Awesome. I want to save some of my comments for when the mayor is on the line, but I was wondering if, Barbara, if you could speak to why the TAP rated the bridge replacement #1 versus WSP putting it in as a lower scoring. I wanted to see what the TAP, it seemed that was the #1 repair was the highest scored alternate or option. How you came to that, and if you have any idea why WSP has a different, SDOT has a different opinion on that.
Part of it, well, one thing is that we are looking at it primarily from the technical aspects. And so when we did the attribute rating and the scoring, we were looking at it from more of a technical components, whereas WSP was looking at all of the more holistically, I guess, more along the lines of what SDOT would be doing and such. And so when we come down to our scoring, from a technical perspective, the TAP has stated that we do believe that the repair is feasible. And so from a technical perspective, we're looking at that as a technical component. And if you look at where we rated with respect to our attributes, that carried through. Whereas there were other considerations that were given by other groups. WSP SDOT, even the CTF all had different prioritizations, and that reflected differently. So does that help answer the question? It kind of follows through as you go through the whole CBA, and it carries through toward that end result. We did not go back and try to re-rate it to be comparative with the other components. We said from a technical perspective, it's repairable, and that was a high consideration.
So to clarify, just make sure I don't get this misunderstood here. So the technical advisory panel that was hired to be the technical experts of the group and really bring your wisdom and knowledge scores the technical feasibility of repair as the top option.
The CBA shows that it is the higher value index for both the capital and the life cycle cost indices were higher for alternative 2, followed very closely by alternative 5 and 4. I'm going to get my numbers mixed up now. But yeah. And so that by alternative 4. And so thank you. They are both feasible. So from a technical perspective, yes, they are both very feasible and could be identified. It's just the way that the numbers work through. And again, this is not a rocket science where you pick a number and then you say, well, this number was, the best number, and so we're just going to go with it. There are the other soft considerations as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Barker to be followed by Jen Temple.
Hi, this is Deb Barker. I'm just going to say I concur with Ann's comments and wanted to point out too that under the equity section of the report, page 24, there's yet another one of those, need more work, need more evaluation. WSP recommends further study on impacts to marginalized communities, economies from more than a perspective focused on detour routes, et cetera, et cetera. So that whole unquantified dollar position that you were talking about, Anne, is valid throughout and in many places in the report. And it's not like it's a smoking gun, but maybe that whole idea is more of like a smoking car that really needs to get our attention. It's something that the report is saying, yep, this needs attention, but not in this report. So that has me. I just want to say I concur with that. I wanted more on the ST3 reality. I kept seeing that date, and yet the reality, the Sound Transit Board hasn't really gotten into where they're going with that, and the pandemic and the funding and any potential delays. So how, I know you can't kind of quantify something that you don't have firmly in place, but I feel that the reality really needs to be more reflected. Did anyone want to comment on that? And lastly, then, could someone remind me where this 2066 mystery year came from? That was the Alt2 future, kick the can down the road, fix it. And I was trying to remember where that date came from.
Hi, Deb. I think I could answer. The date came from the remaining service life of the bridge, the 40-year. So that would basically kick us out to 2060, 2063, and that's where that year came from. And that would be,
it's saying 66, so the 2060s.
Yes, that would be
sounds weird to say. Okay.
But for the CBA purpose and life cycle assumptions, that was the
based
replacement.
off what's left over.
Yes.
Is that realistic? Is it going to last?
That's a rhetorical question, I think.
That is a good question, and that's where the whole risk comes in at that point, is that we believe the repairs can last that 40 years, and before anything else would have to be done, the structure is in reasonably good shape for its age. We haven't seen corrosion issues. And yet you're buying an old structure. What happens with the other bearings? If you repair it, could another bearing lock up and create other issues? I mean, there are risks for a structure. Will it last? That's, I want to get, back in the olden days, the magic 8-ball, shake it up and turn it over. The same thing with Sound Transit, yes, no, maybe. And so that we do not have a knowledge of what the bridge what will happen to it if it is repaired, other than what we can say we are installing to last for the 40 years.
Thank you. It's a huge, complicated document, and it's amazing the way so many things are woven together, and yet there's no one direction. So thank you. I mean, there is, but there's not.
Well, yeah, and thanks, Deb. And can I just mention to that end, that's why the CBA isn't the whole board, right? It's not the whole totality of things that a decision needs to be made upon.
I think 2066 also was a Zager and Evans song back in the late 60s. I'm not sure. Jen Temple to be followed by Colleen Desmond.
Thanks. And just wanted to also piggyback off what Ann, Deb, and Dan also said. With all due respect, Barbara, one of the things that has piqued my ears, not just in this column, what you talked about, but previously with the so-called rapid replacement, and trying to compare it to the repair option, is these words like it's an idea, it could be, it can be, very early stages, should be looked at, too early to say, concept only. So it's very hard to compare something that seems like, based on the CBA, we know much more about at this point, which is the repair option, to this suddenly out of kind of, thin air in the last few weeks, rapid replacement that is still concept only, too early to say, very early stages, could be, and just an idea.
So let me start by saying that I think that I speak in engineering terms sometimes, the same words used in public that may be interpreted differently. So I will say that any new bridge design would start at all of those words. That's a preliminary engineering is what you do in order to solidify. And so we are taking none of these concepts up to a preliminary or a 30% level, or something where you've got the hard numbers behind it. And so because the repair has already been partially, we've got the stabilization. So there's been numbers that have gone behind it. So I am quantifying them differently, but all of those, if you want to call them disclaimers, can be, should be, concept, those are all perfectly reasonable words to say, yes, this is something we believe is a feasible and should be looked at. Here I'm going with the shoulds. If a replacement is chosen over a repair, that's when the numbers come to it. And this is a good concept and should and would be further advanced to give that assurance. There's at this level, when you're doing a cost benefit and you're trying to make a selection, repair or replace, you're not going to take something up to a 30% design or even the preliminary and the TS&L stage. So you take the concept, you make sure that there's no fatal flaws, if you want to put it that way. There are no fatal flaws. There are challenges, just as any project would have challenges that would be worked through, but we do not see fatal flaws in this concept.
Thank you. I've got three more people, Colleen, Diane Sosney, and Lisa Herbold, but I see that we've been joined by Mayor Durkin. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to the mayor. She has a lot of things on her plate, and she's joining us, I think, for the third time in person, virtually in person. Mayor, thank you for joining us today. You've got a task force here who has worked very hard. This is either our 12th or 13th meeting, depending what you count. And they've asked good questions. I think they've asked most of the questions you're going to be asking yourself as you make this decision. And I think it'll be a good opportunity for them to share their perspective with you. So if you take a few minutes to address the task force, and then I'm going to turn it over to Paulina to oversee the conversation with you from there. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. I wanted to kind of lurk so I could just hear it without you knowing I was here. So that wasn't very fair. So I apologize to those people I cut off. It's really an honor to be here again. And I am, again, really sorry we can't be doing this in person. I think that all of the impacts of COVID have made everything harder, but this kind of civic participation, to see how many times you all have met, how seriously you're taking this, how much time you've spent reading the materials, asking the hard questions. It's as good as civic engagement gets, I think, during the time of COVID. So I really want to thank each of you. Really big thanks to your chairs who are spending even more time outside of the Zoom rooms trying to figure out how we marshal. So first, a big applause for the chairs and for all of you. Thank you very much for everything. I mostly want to be here to listen today. I'm briefed at least once a week by SDOT, the engineers, and others. I've been really working hard behind the scenes. I've talked again to almost every one of our congressional delegation and senators about how important this is, how critical it is to the economy of our city, to the economy of our region, as well as to the people who live in West Seattle and all the surrounding environment. I also want to say that I've talked to the legislators, both in leadership and our delegation, so that we can make sure that we are all making this a big priority, whatever decision is made, that we can get going. As I said at the very first meeting, for me at the outset, there was basically 3 questions, and each one of those obviously is very complex. But the first is when we're looking at repair or replace or anything in that spectrum, was first, how much is it going to cost both to build it and to maintain it? How long will it last? And when can we get it open? And so looking at those things, we've been hoping to provide you with all the information I've had. I know last time we met, there was some frustration that you didn't have the numbers you wanted. We made sure we tried to get all that alternatives to you. The rapid replacement of the superstructure was new. People are continuing to look at that and timing, but mostly today, I know that the impacts of this bridge being out cannot be overstated. I was able to be in West Seattle last week, talk to some folks as well as Soto and Georgetown and South Park. And first, there's just the impacts of everybody who's living there, but it impacts every part of your lives, trying to get to medical appointments, trying to get to jobs that are super essential. As Diane Sosney reminded me how many thousands of healthcare workers live and are impacted by this bridge outage in West Seattle. We also know that the future of the port and those great jobs are relying on us getting this fixed or replaced as quickly as possible. So know that we are working really hard. Everything we've done to date, we would have to do whichever option we choose. We needed to shore up that bridge, whether we were going to replace or repair, because otherwise we were fearful it would fall down and it would eliminate some of the options and make it more difficult. So, but we're reaching the juncture. We did have one curveball that I didn't expect, and I'm sure many of you read about it, but because the president labeled Seattle an anarchist jurisdiction and told his government that they would have to basically list all the federal funds that we had and they want to take those away from us, we learned about 2 weeks ago that applied to some of our transportation dollars. And we got the reading that transportation dollars for both infrastructure projects like this, as well as Sound Transit, could be jeopardized by the fact that we were listed, and therefore, which is the reason why you saw us file the lawsuit last week, because the harm was just too great and was no longer something that was just hypothetical. It actually was being pushed through some of the government bureaucracy. We'll continue to work that both with our congressional delegation, which actually holds the power of the purse. Everybody needs to vote. I won't say how to vote, but everyone needs to vote. And we'll continue all that. So now I just, again, want to thank you. I know the impacts have been strong and varied. Pretty ironic, South Park first suffered because its bridge was out. And now that the other bridge is out, it's suffering in a different way with all the traffic and the congestion and the additional environmental burden. So Thank you for the time. And now I just like to hear from various people, and I will let the chairs guide me from here out.
Mayor Durkin, thank you so much for joining us today and for giving the time to be here with us, directly hearing from Community Task Force. We're super grateful for your presence, also for acknowledging the amount of work that this has taken for all of our Community Task Force members. Learning, it hasn't been an easy task to learn and understand and put our engineer degree for the past 4 months and try to understand all the pros and cons. But you know, also for treating with urgency and fairness, because we do need to address this in a manner that you are acknowledging the environmental impacts and all the social and economic components impacted this task force is dealing with, so and neighborhoods. So thank you for being here with us. We would like to hear directly from the community members first that have been part of this task force, giving an emphasis on the actual community members. We are aware that you are also having conversations with some elected officials in another venue. So this hopefully will be a good opportunity for you to hear from these communities. And in prior to your visit, we have been sending a couple of emails reminding, you know, what are the type of questions to shape the answers of the feedback that you're trying to hear from today's conversations. And those have been put into a format of how would we like to, you know, hear from the community members, and as far as what are the concerns about the repairing of the bridge. So as we are answering and as we are hearing the feedback, think about the questions that were sent. What do you like about replacing the bridge now, and what are the pros and cons of that as far as the concern of the replacing the bridge? And what happens if we repair it now? The most important thing to me is are one of the attributes. I think it will be important to cover those. So as mayor is making this decision, what are the most important attributes that Mayor Durkin should consider in order to make this decision, as well as all the additional information in the final CBA or the rapid replacement concept. If has changed your mind, we have given this week to do a little bit more of analysis among ourselves. So we would appreciate hearing all these direct questions to this, as we have Mayor listening to you directly. So that's the format that we're gonna go. And I already see some hands there. And as I said, I'm going to be here trying to look at the chat and acknowledge all the hands being lifted in there. So I'm gonna start with Marcy Carpenter, and we go from there. Welcome, Marcy.
Thank you, Paulina, and thank you, Mary Durkin. You know, I mean, there's so many unknowns with all of this. And I was beginning to feel like repair was the best option because it would just get things open faster. And then we got the news about the rapid replacement option. I view that as just as viable as the other replacement options because none of them are at 30% design. None of them are even at 10% design. I just feel like repair will get us open faster, but we don't know how long the rest of the bridge will last. You know, will other parts fail? What about the Spokane Street part? And I also have concerns about the maintenance money. You know, I know that we have bridges elsewhere that are in grave need of repair, just not quite as grave as the West Seattle Bridge. And I know how difficult it is to get dollars. I know there's even more uncertainty right now about that, but I think we have to decide a course. And I have come down to think that replacement is the best option, with the great hope that the rapid replace can become a real can be designed and built as it's proposed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcy. And just as a reminder, as we go through calling the list of the hands being raised, to say your name and where do you represent, that will be easier also. So the next person that I'm going to call is Jill.
Hello, thank you, Mayor Durkin, for being here with us today and for also appointing 2 outstanding co-chairs. We've been ably led, so thank you. I just wanted to share Vigor's perspective on this. A lot of people in the Seattle area think of Vigor as a marine fabricator and marine ship repair company, but we are also a bridge fabricator. And we are a potential fabricator in the rapid repair. And we're confident it's a great achievable option, which also brings an ancillary benefit of creating jobs in the Pacific Northwest during an economic crisis. So that together with, we really viewed that emergence as one of the superstructure replacement alternative for the rapid repair, being able to be brought to market so much faster as sort of the big game changer as it relates to the repair versus replace. And I know there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but in my mind, given the needs of the community to get traffic moving again, and it's really rapid replacement or repair, not, repair or replace. So that's just our perspective, and appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts.
Thank you, Jill. I'm going to call next Diane Sosny, and after it's going to be Don Austin.
Thank you, Paulina, and good afternoon, Mayor. I'm just looking where you are. Okay, I see you. So I have a couple of thoughts. We did have a chance to talk about this briefly yesterday, but in light of what we heard before you joined us on this committee, I think part of the equation, when we think about the bridge closed early March, I can't remember the date. And then the committee started in June. So that's a 3-month period. And then June now through the end of October, another 4 months for all the due diligence and necessary studies, et cetera. But I want to offer to you and the group this thought that the decision-making process should be put on a fast track. We've been talking about we want a repair or rebuild on a fast track. I think at this point, we need to have the decision-making, because and I heard this morning, earlier today, people saying, well, this group wants to have more study about this, and this group wants to have more study about that. And I'm just thinking, how many months is that? So I want to offer that be a criteria for your consideration and for the groups that we're ready. I think maybe pretty close. I don't want to be Pollyannish about it. I'm not in the construction business, but I think the breadth of the stakeholders and to borrow, if I might, from John, my colleague in the labor movement from the Longshore, made a point that, we keep talking about it as the West Seattle Bridge, for the West Seattle community. But in fact, and you mentioned this in your opening, it has broad implications for the entire area, because services need to be brought into the community. So it's not just us trying to get me out of here, it's other people trying to get in to do their jobs, whether it be repair, road repair, or I don't know, garbage, or you name it, whatever it is, services that need to come in, that need to bring supplies, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one thing. The second is, can you share with us what the timeline is that you're looking at? Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. So I'm going to write your question for the end, as we are trying to hear some of community members. And I have said on the chat, try to use your 1 minute so we can allow for more community member participation on the feedback. So next is going to be Don, and followed by Deb Barker.
Hi, Mayor. This is Dan Austin with the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce. I agree with Jill Mackey that job creation is important, but I also am here very important that we save as many jobs in West Seattle. The chamber, the businesses out here are being hurt by the lack of ability to get folks and services into West Seattle and out of West Seattle. I could give a list of different industries and how they're affected, but over 500 plus businesses over here, and I'm sure Laura from the Junction Association could jump in. We're hurting on multiple fronts. We need this bridge restored as soon as possible. I really hope that the repair seems to be technically the most feasible option from what's been given. I believe that the unicorn project that was thrown out of a 3-year rapid replacement with cutting EIS studies out of the city of Seattle is a little ludicrous. I'm sure it's technically feasible to build that bridge. It is not technically feasible to do a 10-week EIS over the Duwamish with tribal fishing rights and everything else. That concept, I hope, gets thoroughly vetted and things put in place if it's even looked at. But financially, $47 million to repair the bridge seems like just a no-brainer to me at this point, unless we have some major assurances that a 3-year timeline is legitimately can be delivered in that time frame. It concerns me greatly to see the businesses cut off and patients cut off. My wife is a nurse who manages the COVID testing for Kaiser, and she is stuck in traffic 3 hours a day. It affects so many industries. We need to get this reopened and reconnected. I know it gives assurances to the port. I hope we don't all get distracted by a slick YouTube video and a sales pitch from HTMB, whose job is to convince us to buy that bridge. So please, the small businesses, the community, we need to be reopened. 47 million is a drop in the bucket, and the maintenance costs, I think, are possibly overblown on the full life replacement there. And I believe we don't know if in 66, if we need to tear down that entire bridge or if construction technology will allow us to do rehabilitation and extend it even further. So all those things I think should be taken into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Deb?
Hi, Deb Barker here again. I'm a replacement fan. I'm not interested in kicking the can down the proverbial road because the road might break. I don't want to count on ST3 for being there because we're not in control of that. I don't want to get into who's in control of that, but I want to see more urgency in the name of an emergency, out of the box thinking with permitting, funding, and that's it.
Thank you. That was great. Succinct participation. Thank you, Deb. Colleen, followed by John Persack.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Mayor Durkin. Thank you for joining us again today. And I'm looking at the questions that Mayor Nichols sent us. And as I read the 89-page document this week, I went back and forth about how I felt about repair versus replace. And one of the questions that Mayor Nichols sent was, are the attributes that were most important to you 2 weeks ago still the most important? And I'm from Highland Park neighborhood, and we are experiencing a great deal of traffic impacts in our neighborhood as most of the detour routes are coming through here. And so as I was reading the cost benefit analysis, I think I ultimately went to the socioeconomic risks and what's really happening in the communities. And so the urgency for me is more about the people and how this is impacting these neighborhoods, including South Park, Georgetown, Highland Park, Rocks Hill, and Delridge. So, urgency, I think we keep hearing that in the speed, and my reasoning behind that is mostly the socioeconomic impacts.
Thank you, Colleen. Happy to bring John Persack, followed by Jen Temple.
Thank you, Paulina, and good morning, Mayor Durkin. Great to see you again. I want to bring up a couple of points in favor of replacement, and they have to do with opportunity cost and risk. So if we're talking about $47 million that we would spend on a repair, I'm presuming that that's going to be local money because I cannot imagine the state or the feds under any administration is going to give the city of Seattle money to put into a structure that is not going to last as long as a new structure. That $47 million of local money is $47 million less that we're going to be able to spend in the Georgetown and South Park and other areas of the city that have foregone maintenance on the streets and sidewalks and so forth. So I think we need to look at that lost opportunity for how we could really spend that local money. The second item is the risk. Right now, the bridge is closed, and in spite of the fact that it is a lot of trouble, we have reached an equilibrium, and I see that SDOT and others are working very hard to mitigate the effects of the detour and so forth. But if we go to repair the bridge, that's going to mean 2 shutdowns. We do not have all the data in terms of how successful repair can be, and I don't think that we can say that it would be 100% successful. So the risk is there could be 3 shutdowns, and that would be incredibly disruptive for not just the entire city, but also West Seattle in particular and the port. So those are 2 of the many reasons why I would support full replacement. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Jen, followed by Annie Guerra.
Thank you, Paulina, and thanks so much for being here to hear our perspectives, Mayor Durkin. I'm going to basically piggyback on Dan Austin's statement. I'm with West Seattle Bridge Now, and based on the information that we have in hand today, the findings from the CBA, we are in favor of repairing. It is the only way to get us back into full mobility in a time span that makes sense for the community as far as we're concerned. And the other option for rapid replacement has way too many open questions at this point. There's just zero certainty from what we've heard so far to date on that being an option. Right now, as Dan said, it's a bit of a unicorn, and I don't believe in unicorns. So thanks so much.
Oh, my son believes in unicorns. Thank you. I will go with Annie Guerra and Teague McNeil.
Hi, Mayor Durkin. Thanks so much for being here. This is Ann Higuera. I'm a small business owner in West Seattle. I walked into this process being really focused on the seismic about the bridge and being concerned that any kind of repair would require a lot of retrofitting. And then as we've learned more and more about the options, I've kind of come back around to feeling like despite the bridge having been built quite a long time ago and not to current seismic standards, that we're really in the best, that repair is really the best decision. And I feel like it's important to do it not just to get us moving and preserve the local community, but also because it buys us a lot of time to plan for a replacement and to make that replacement go as quickly as possible. I think it's really hard to plan effectively for a replacement right now, especially with the FAA regulations, the Coast Guard regulations, all of these, and all of the interconnected jurisdictions and overlapping regulations at that location. Repair is pretty much it's going to work, and all of the other options still have a lot of risks involved in them. And I know that it is spending money and spending money again, but I'm really concerned about what will happen to the West Seattle community if we don't get moving again.
I would like to do a time check with Mayor Durkin. How much longer do we have your presence today? Because I want to plan it perfectly to answer a couple of questions.
I just texted someone to see if I could extend it. So
yes. Okay, that's wonderful.
So let's keep going for a little bit.
Perfect. Okay, because I do want to give a space to answer.
Yeah, look, everybody's put in the time. The least I can do is hear your input directly. So let's keep going.
Very appreciative. Okay, and I am not acknowledging Councilmember Sternberg and Councilmember Herbal. I know you have raised your hands. I'm just giving community space first, and then I will go with you. So, team, followed by Peter Goldman.
Hi, Mayor Durkin. I've been going back and forth between the repair and the rapid replacement, and like everyone else has said, the rapid replacement has a lot of benefits, but not a lot of detail. If we can get detail that would, let us know for sure that this could be feasible in a 3-year time frame, I would move towards that. But right now, I'm still looking at repair being the best option, taking the TAP's information into consideration that it's going to be a long-term usage after the repair, that everything will still be functioning. I'm fine with that, and I understand that kicking the can down the road isn't the greatest option, but I think we need to get this thing moving and get everybody back to business as usual. If it lasts 40 years, hopefully by then, if all the movies I've watched over my lifetime are true, we'll have flying cars by then. We won't even have to worry about repairing the bridge anyway. So I'm going with repair.
Thank you, team. Peter Goldman, followed by MLK Labor.
Good afternoon, Mayor. I too am leaning towards replacement because I think we have to consider the long term. We need the long view in our society. I feel for folks in West Seattle who are in hardship right now. It's heartbreaking, but I just don't see how we can responsibly spend all of this money on something that might not last long, that might need to be replaced. But my real pitch is that I just would urge you to use whatever power you have to get Sound Transit more involved in this decision. It just seems irresponsible that our city and Sound Transit would be so siloed that we can't coordinate more on some kind of crossing. It just makes no sense to me. That is going to be the huge game changer for West Seattle, is to get Sound Transit here. And it just seems like a huge lost opportunity. I know the timelines are different and maybe irreconcilable, but I would just urge you to convene an emergency with Sound Transit and say, look, this is a big decision for all of us. We are a region, we function together. Can we please get better on the same page? So I think replace, but I would ask for a replace working with Sound Transit and really exhausting anything we can do with them to make sure we can't sort of coordinate this decision, because it just seems too siloed to me. Thank you.
Great points. Thank you, Peter. I'm going to go with Katie Garrow, followed by David Bestock.
Hi, Mayor Durkin. Katie Garrow, MLK Labor. Nice to see you. I want to back up what John Persak said and say that we really appreciate all of the studying that's been done. However, nothing has persuaded me so far that a repair option is better than a full replacement. Obviously I represent the Labor Council, which has a lot of constituents, but I'm also a 32-year-old homeowner in the neighborhood, and I plan to spend the rest of my life here. And I'm in this for the long game. I don't want to, in my working lifetime, have to see the bridge shut down again. Our economy in the Seattle area is only going to continue to grow. Our city is only going to continue to grow. We need to act like a growing city, which means to be responsible with our infrastructure decisions and not do the thing that's necessarily the most politically expedient right now, but the thing that's the right thing for our city for the long term. So, so far supporting a replacement option. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. David Bestock, and we will follow with Council Member Herbal and Commissioner Steinberg.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. Mayor Durkin, David Bestock with the Delridge Neighborhoods Development Association. Speaking really for myself, because I haven't gotten a chance to pull feedback on the 89-page document from my community. But I would just basically echo what Peter Goldman said. I think it's silly not to be in collaboration with Sound Transit. Growing up in Seattle and watching some of the transportation debacles over the years, it just seems like coordinating efforts has to be part of the conversation. If it's not, it's just it's it feels a little embarrassing. So I would lean towards replacement for I think that reason. But again, just sort of doubling down on coordinating with Sound Transit to me seems a higher priority than maybe anything in this conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks for your patience, Councilmember Herbal.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay on the mute button here. Really appreciate the opportunity to give feedback, and appreciate Mayor Durkin's willingness to talk with me about our efforts on an ongoing basis. As the council member for District 1, I hear every day from residents and businesses that are hurting. The sooner that we restore bridge access, the better. That is a premium value for me. Once social distancing ends or decreases, traffic and access issues will increase to a level that I don't even think we can imagine right now. 2 years for repair is shorter than other alternatives. The capital cost is relatively affordable at $47 million compared to the other options. The council is poised to authorize $100 million in debt for the stabilization work that's already been done, future repair costs, as well as the Reconnect West Seattle projects. The TAP's confidence is strong that repair will last 40 years is really compelling. We've also had the council's independent consultant take a look at some of these assumptions around the longevity of a repair as well, and they seem to be in concurrence with the TAP's confidence around a repair. And it's not really clear to me why the risks around the life cycle on a repair seem to be contradicting some of the confidence around the lifetime of a repair. This is the baseline for me by which any replacement options should be evaluated. It has to overall perform better. 6 years is too long. Obviously, I think there's strong agreement. I don't see any option that takes 6 years is viable. And there are risks for a rapid replacement, including the permitting risks, the funding risks in the timeline. And those risks are not all solvable by political will. I think there is a lot of political will around addressing the bridge closure, but there are a lot of issues that are out of our control. And I just don't feel that this late breaking option being put at the table at this time gives me confidence that this is the direction that we should go with. Lastly, I just want to say that the cost benefit analysis questions that Mayor Nichols sent us, equity and impact to disadvantaged communities, is very important to me, as well as the business and workforce impacts, both for West Seattle businesses, small businesses, and the regional economy. Thank you.
Including the Duwamish Valley. Thank you, Councilmember Lisa Herbal. So we are going to move on. I only have Commissioner Stamberg next. And so if you were a community member and you didn't raise your hand, perhaps you have 1 more minute after the minute of Commissioner Stamberg.
Okay, thanks very much, Paulina. Appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Mayor Durkin, so much for your close attention and participation. I think it really demonstrates your commitment and your support for community engagement, that you have taken the time. I have to weigh in here a little bit, since everybody else is. I think it is far too premature to be settling in on one option at this point. The work has not been done to identify fully the risk, including the particularly important one to Councilmember Herbal's comment of protracted delay in restoring capacity. It's a marketing job to say we can do a quick replacement in 3 years. There are 47,000 bridges in the United States today, according to the American Road and Transportation Builders Association 2019, waiting, that are in critically defective condition. Poor condition, including Interstates 405 and Interstate 5, including the Brooklyn Bridge, the Memorial Bridge connecting Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial with Arlington. If we think we can suddenly rise to the top, as the consultant said, as the #1 priority in the United States, I think we need to think again about that. We don't have the ability to influence at that level the level of emergency prioritization, given the 47,000 other bridges that have been waiting in years and through the political process. So let's get sober about this. Likewise, the city has not, and the consultants have not really clarified through probability analysis, these issues around repair and potential extended life, and why there seems to be such enormous discrepancies depending on who's speaking regarding, yes, it could be 40 years, maybe 5% probability it won't be, but then again, it's too uncertain, and 15 years. So what matters most, I think, to businesses and West Seattle residents and to the seaport is that we get capacity restored as soon as possible. And we do it efficiently and practically within the ability that we have. There is just too much at risk here regarding the external impacts of a protracted shutdown. I would remind you that the Alaska Way Viaduct Bridge replacement was emergency declared by the governor of the state of Washington. How many years did it take to actually get its replacement? Albeit it was serviceable, but it was under extreme risk of earthquake, earth seismic risk, and collapse. So, let's be real about this, but I would call upon the city at this point, if I could offer my independent view, not representing the port, because we haven't taken a position officially with my colleagues or the seaport, that we continue to develop further repair reinforcement option and the so-called quick replacement. I hate to use that word because I think it's fantasy land, but we should look at the probability not only of how long could a repair life extend, but how long it actually could take to get a full replacement of the bridge spans, as the consultant reported. There needs to be a real reality check on the environmental review process. There is no such thing as a 6-week environmental review. Peter Goldman knows that very well in the state of Washington. SEPA, NEPA can take months, if not years, if it's challenged, and it will be most likely by somebody. The funding is also a grave uncertainty at this time, and there's no clear pathway to securing even a fraction of the funding for a full replacement. So I'll end it with that, but I also want to sympathize with my good friend Peter Goldman and others who have suggested that we really ought to have an alternative that includes light rail. Why would we not? If we're doing 100-year, 50 to 100-year replacement plan, at least give us a bridge that could accommodate light rail as an option. That would be more sustainable, more green, and a lower carbon footprint. The lowest carbon footprint of any of these options is a repair reinforce, however, because it doesn't entail all of that vast new resource going into a new bridge. End of speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandberg. I'm going to call Todd Carden, and also curious about Mike, who raised a hand, but I don't see it anymore. Mark H. So go ahead, Todd.
Hey, thank you very much, and welcome, Mayor Durkin. It's been great to have the opportunity to communicate with you, and really appreciate the fact that you've been out in our communities asking these tough questions about this choice. I am a firm believer in repairing the bridge now. The impact on our community is far too reaching to extend a time, to extend this with all the risks that we have and the potential devastating impacts due to uncertainty. A lot of folks have been talking about that uncertainty, and I think it's real. Our community in West Seattle and those who are bearing the brunt of these countless vehicles moving through these neighborhoods can't sustain this for years. We can secure the funding to repair this bridge at that $47 million. And I think that's going to be a big play in this down the line. We can't gamble on that. The environmental, social, business, and community impacts are huge. They're immense. I mean, we haven't even quantified what that is, but being a small business owner in that community, I know that it's only going to get worse before it gets better. So fix the bridge now, plan for the future. We can be thoughtful, incorporating all the diverse needs of our collective communities that are being impacted by this bridge closure. incorporate transportation with SDOT, and work towards a future replacement option, but get the ball rolling now. So I just hope that you can consider that greatly as you're making your difficult choice here. And thanks for the time.
Thank you, Mark. And then our co-chair, Greg Nichols, will close us down here.
Just in the Rox Hill neighborhood, seeing the increase in traffic, yes, is very disheartening, and you do wonder what the full impact on the neighborhood is going to be. But at this point, I lean strongly towards replacing the bridge. One, because West Seattle in itself is growing logistically and demographically in terms of how many people are moving into the area. And even though this feels like a curse, it seems like it's also an opportunity to make the necessary replacements that we need to ensure that we don't have to deal with this again in the future. I mean, I really empathize with the businesses. I mean, it's definitely awful, but how many more times are we going to have to deal with this as a community when we could just get it right now, fix and replace that bridge, and maybe incorporate some light rail and think about West Seattle moving into the future instead of just reacting in crisis mode right now. But that's just my own opinion.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to call Laura Radford.
Hello, Mayor Durkin. Thank you so much for all of your time and effort into this critical decision. I was actually late to the meeting because I just finished my monthly board meeting with my board of directors, and my board is made up of 12 very involved business owners, and they range from restaurant owners to a guitar shop to the development director for the West Seattle Food Bank. We had a really great conversation about the bridge, and I've also polled our merchants as well. And I can say overwhelmingly, the response is, please repair the bridge. And let's do it safely, and let's do it as quickly as possible. I think if we repair the bridge and then take a look at what replacement would look like in the future, I think that would be great. But let's get the engine of commerce going again and get people back and forth across the West Seattle Bridge. We really would appreciate you considering that.
Thank you, Laura. My co-chair, Mayor Nichols.
Thank you, Paulina. And thank you to everyone who has raised their hand and shared their thoughts with the mayor. Mayor, there's not a unanimous feeling. You have a hard decision to make, which is why you get the big bucks. And you have the common good as your goal. Which of these paths takes us to the highest and best common good? I would just emphasize a couple of things, since we have you for another 15 minutes. It should be enough time. The overwhelming feeling, I think, is that time is of the essence, that waiting until 2026 to reconnect West Seattle, to stop the intrusion of West Seattle traffic into neighborhoods to the south really is too long. Sound transit. I've spent a little bit of time on sound transit issues, and Deb Barker and Aaron Goodman and I served on a similar committee to advise sound transit with the West Seattle and Ballard connections. They were at that time hoping to have the West Seattle connection by 2030. I would acknowledge that with the recession that may be put off a bit, but not too much. So we will have a sound transit connection. So the idea of repair, I did not favor repair when I started this process. I thought that 5 years, which is what the estimate was way too short a time for that kind of investment. But now we're hearing from credible sources that it would be as much as 40 years, possibly less, but as much as 40 years. And the advantage to that is that sound transit will be done certainly by then. and we will have a backup. We'll have a real backup. Today, we have no backup. We can't get on buses in great numbers. We can't get on the water taxi that I started 21 years ago because we have to socially distance, and we don't have a rail connection. So the closing of the bridge is compounded by these other restrictions that would have allowed us to mitigate it at least to some extent. So so the repair option gives us some certainty. I am very intrigued by the rapid replacement, but as has been said, I wouldn't call it a unicorn. I think it's more real than that, but it needs to be vetted to the same level as any of the other replacements before we can count on it being able to get us out of this mess in 2 or 3 years. So I want to thank you for the time you've already spent and the time you're going to spend, perhaps tossing and turning as you consider this important decision. We are counting on you. We are giving you our best thoughts and advice, and we stand ready to help. Whatever decision you make, we'll help you try and make it happen in the best possible way for the community. So with that, Mayor, you've heard some questions, certainly heard some comments. You've got a few minutes in your time to respond to what you've heard.
That's great. And I don't know whether Paulina, you wanted to have any final words on how you viewed things before I did that.
Yeah, I thought you'd be tired of me hearing from me.
No way.
But no, I appreciate the time. I echo what my community fellows have said. You know, it's a very tough decision, but we are trusting that you're taking into consideration the social, economic, and environmental impacts that these communities are facing, putting equity, of course, on the top. How are we going to be looking this on the big picture? What are the creativity and how we can address the things long term that this is making us realize how we address transit, how we address mobility, how are we also bringing a regional approach to have this decision being made based on the people that are being impacted. I think it's very important that we think of the jobs, that we think of the people that are being also impacted with huge life expectancy differences and additional burdens that we are dealing with and that COVID has reaffirmed as well. Thank you so much, Mayor Durkin. I think you had a couple of questions of what the timeline is and on the urgency that you're having. So I would love for you to address those questions. And once again, we thank you. We look forward to meeting with you. We're gathering people's feedback in written, so you have more opportunity to analyze this, and we definitely look forward to hearing back from you on the decision in the short time.
Thank you very much, Paulina. And thanks again to everybody for being here, for all your work and for the questions. I took some notes on some of them. If I missed one, I apologize. Email us or something, I'll get back to you. The first is that, make it urgent. I can promise you that, and I just want to give all of the folks at SDOT a shout out. I know it feels to the people who have to suffer through all of the impacts of this bridge that we're not moving quickly enough because it has been many months, but they have been working really, really hard. And one of the things from the beginning that we did say, and Sam and Heather and Mr. Donahue, the engineer, have been very great about, and Elliot from my office and Shafali, is how do we make sure we don't lose time? Because Seattle we need community, and we needed the technical advisory group to be really looking at options and advise us. But we didn't want to slow us down or do one thing after another, eliminate repair and then go to the next one. We wanted to make sure that we preserve those options. So they've been, I don't know how many of you seen it, but the shoring work is going well. There's always things that come up. We ran into a couple snags this last week, but it is very urgent. The timing of the decision, I can't give you a date. There's some additional information I'm hoping to get. I wanted to get this input. There's some additional city council members and legislators I'm waiting to hear from. but we're gonna make it in a time frame that we don't lose time. But we also don't want to make it feel that if we have to make it in the next 2 weeks, we can eliminate a good option that might last longer, or the one that isn't feasible. So there's some additional information. Some of the questions I heard you asking, we're going to get more information. Sound Transit, I just want to emphasize, we've been pushing since the beginning to stay coordinated with Sound Transit. The unfortunate reality right now with Sound Transit is they have delayed all of their projects. So we will not take up any of the main projects until next year when we know what the revenue stabilization is there as a board. And the ability to coordinate with Sound Transit for a replacement bridge almost certainly would extend it out many years. It doesn't mean we shouldn't evaluate what that bridge is. And I think regardless of what decision we make here, whether it is replacement or it is repair, I think we got to push on Sound Transit really hard as a city to be having a much more adaptable bridge than we're thinking about that is only for one purpose. You know, it could be a bridge that is a bridge for both light rail and transit, or light rail transit and bikes. I just really believe that we're going to have that time when we're going to get a lot of federal funding, that we now know more than ever before how the mobility needs of that part of the region don't fit together very well. And so we need to be building more access, but we will continue to push Sound Transit to see if there's some packages we can put together. One of the questions I asked SDOT recently was, are any of the options on the table right now, the repair, the replacement, or the super fast replacement, what isn't super fast, but the rapid replacement, are any of those compatible with a bridge that could accommodate light rail for Sound Transit? And the short answer is no. You can always make it engineering, but the thing that makes it feasible, both from a cost standpoint and from an engineering standpoint, is we'll be replacing a minimal part of it. And we don't yet know today how Sound Transit is entering, at what elevations, where its route is going to be. There's a lot of work in those neighborhoods, as I know Councilmember Herbold and some of the people on this call have testified before Sound Transit on the various options. So we will continue to push on that front, because I do think we need to make that a multimodal bridge. The regional impacts are absolutely clear, and I'm glad everyone talked about that, because just the port alone services not just our region, but multiple states. And when I met with one of the senators, they're creating a map to show how many states rely on what comes in and out of that port. Hawaii, Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, you go almost the way to Colorado. So the regional impacts that are huge, and we're going to leverage that to get as many federal dollars as we can, whatever route we take. I thought it was ironic, Katie, that you said you plan to spend the rest of your life here when you were sitting in a car, and we really want to make that not the case. That was a joke, but I do think that it just shows you. I think it's notable how many of the Seattle Department of Transportation team and council members live in West Seattle or the environs. And so they have been feeling it very personally and letting me know. In terms of funding, I think, Peter, you raised a good question. Right at this juncture, we actually stand really well for federal funding. And I think we would pursue federal funding under any of the options, because even though there's the thousands of bridges you note, we're the only bridge in this category along such a category where the bridge is actually out rather than just needing repairs. So, that's because 2020 loves Seattle so much. But I just want you to know that the EIS process, we're taking a really hard look at that to see what things we can do to expedite it regardless. And then looking at the cost benefit analysis of how long will this bridge last? And that was I, like everyone, at first thought replacement wasn't even on the table, because it was, 5 years just wasn't worth it. We'd spend all that money, be closed down for 3, and then in 5 years go through the same process again. We're pushing a little harder on that analysis to see if we can get it between that 15 and 40. But look, we got to get this thing up and going. And I think that the Seattle Department of Transportation, they are taking this super seriously, and they've had a really, their spell of the freeze, the squeeze, the new viaduct, the new tunnel, and then this, but they just keep working it. And know that as hard as you're pushing me, I'm apologizing to them all right now in public that I push them pretty hard, because we got to get this done, and they feel it, and they want to get it done, but we also want to get it done right, because we do want to make sure that, we made mistakes in other times in Seattle's history, like when we did not pass light rail in the 70s when we could have, and we're still making up for it as a region. So I want to make sure that the decision we make actually has enough durability to last for a period of time. There's always risk and uncertainty. I think that the seismic risk is huge, not just for whatever we do for the part that we would replace, but all of the structure that goes the rest of it. So, because we know that's alternately in some places a liquefaction zone, and some of those piers are pretty old. And this bridge was supposed to last 70 years. So I appreciate all your impact. I'm going to probably, circle back with some of the chairs and some of the folks on this call, because I've taken some notes that I have some more questions on, but really want to thank you for your input. And we will make sure that you are the folks who hear first. You put in too much time to have to, we can't promise a call to each of you, but we will try to make sure that, you get the indication really at the outset. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mayor.
And can I just one more pitch? It's not bridge related. Our COVID numbers are going up. It's really, and it impacts our communities of color so much. I know we're all exhausted. Everybody's had it, but we really have to, over the next coming months, really double down on wearing our face covering, washing our hands, not having gatherings. It's going to be really hard around Thanksgiving because people are used to gathering and bringing lots of people together, maybe traveling to relatives or friends' houses. And we just have to, Idaho hit its capacity in its hospitals. And so it's now moving patients to Spokane. And our hospitals are now at about 85%. So we just want to make sure that we in the Seattle, we've done really well. I'm so proud of what we've done as a region. But we've seen the devastating impacts, both health-wise and economically, that this has had on the community. So just want to encourage you all again, do your part. And thanks for everybody who's doing the part, and thanks for your time on this. So everybody take care.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for keeping us safe. Paulina?
All right. So thank you again for your participation. We gathered more than 25 comments coming from you all. I think we got a very good number. So I was very pleased to see that Mayor Durkin gets to hear from you directly. It's important as we're shaping this conversation. A reminder to please send us, if you have changed your mind or want to do additional comments in written, please send it to Greg and myself. That email was really meant from our hearts because we want to hear from you all. And we want to, the mayor, have an opportunity to hear from you all. After all your hard work, after all your commitment, is important that your voice and your constituents are represented in this decision. I think as for next in our agenda, we are going to be going through Michael walking us through the next steps on the conversation. And we're going to hear about some, unless there is additional comments or questions that you had for Heather, as we have Heather and some of our top members are still here.
There were 3 people who I didn't get to call on in the earlier Q&A session on the cost benefit analysis. May I ask them if they still have a comment or a question, Paulina?
Yes, and also I would like to, once you do that, thank you, Greg, for the reminder, to have a quick conversation. You know, we have developed a relationship here, even if it's not the way that I like to develop a relationship, because I like seeing personally, and personally I like hugs and all these, but we have a relationship right now. So to me it will be important. What is going to happen to our task force after the decision is being made, and how are we going to continue with one of our principles that we identified as unity and support to each other. I think I would love a conversation about that. It's coming to an end, the decision, but not the task force. So keep this in mind as the things are coming. And Greg, back to you to answer.
Now, to remind you, these are questions or comments on the cost benefit analysis. Now that we've had a week plus to absorb it. And Colleen Desmond had asked to be recognized, as well as Diane Sosney and Lisa Herbold. So Colleen, do you still?
Yeah, hi.
Great.
I'm still Colleen Desmond, and I still have, well, admittedly, I have many questions, but I will not ask them all because I realized as I read the cost benefit analysis that I don't understand a lot of it, and I had to Google some stuff, but I learned a lot too. And one of the questions I had for Heather and SDOT is, and this kept coming up for me as I read, was the approach structures. And I know that that was one of the risks, and then one of the things that was not necessarily addressed in the CBA. So can you explain that better, and how that SDOT will look at the approach structures and what that entails and how long that will take? And will that be part of the TSNL study as well?
So, Greg, Izzo, let me take a crack and you can interrupt me if I mess it up. So do you want to start with what the approach structures are, what that means? Okay. So there's the bridge part, which in this case is the center span and the two spans on either side. And then everything that leads up to those three is approach. It sort of looks like the bridge lasts all the way from Fauntleroy all the way to I-5, but it's actually several different independent structures. So yes, the approaches will be considered in the type, size, and location. I think the idea would be that any kind of replacement that we did would not impact the approaches. And I also want to take this opportunity to make clear that we are working with Sound Transit all the time. We had a meeting with them last week. We have a meeting with them this week. We are talking with Sound Transit constantly. One of the things, one of the issues though, where the approaches will become very important is if we all decide that including Sound Transit on the structure is important, because you have to get the train up onto the bridge. And so that's where changes to the approach structures could come in, and that could add maybe significantly to the cost of the project. So Greg, did I miss anything there?
No, you hit it. And it's structurally and geometrically as well. Because it's all tied. The main span through piers 15 through 18, basically what we're looking at now, would also have to align geometrically with the remaining corridor alignment too. So that's another factor that we'd have to consider in addition to structural.
Yeah. So, but the bottom line to understand there is, and geometrically means like the shape, just.
If I could add on to that as well, is with respect to, of course, with respect to Fauntleroy, South Spokane Viaduct, and the 4th Avenue off-ramp, I was actually the project manager on all three projects of those, which brought them up to a seismic standard. They have been retrofit, and they are for a no collapse. So they already are more resilient than probably some of the other structures. I can't speak to the whole inventory, but those are three projects that I have worked on in the past and can speak to the seismic. So when you're looking at the bridge repair / replace, if the bridge is replaced, it's probably going to be more seismically resilient than the other approaches, even though they've had retrofit. However, that's one less component to have to deal with in a major seismic event, to have it standing later and usable. So there are different, levels of seismic retrofitting that you can do, but just wanted to put that out there that the approaches are not they are resilient at this point.
Did that answer your question, Colleen?
Yeah, thanks a bunch.
And the approaches wouldn't be really messed with other than option 5, alternative 5, which would be a complete replacement? Or I guess.
So yeah, option 6 would require a complete rethinking of the approaches, and maybe more than just the approaches.
At 2 and 4?
2 and 4, yeah, a superstructure replacement, the whole goal would be not to touch the approaches. A replacement of the bridge ground up, maybe we would have to do some finagling, but I think the idea would be that we wouldn't want to touch the approaches as much as possible, just because that's such a long.
Right.
Yeah.
Diane Sosney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be interested in staff's technical response on what the best estimate data shows on quick repair versus the quick replace. How much time difference are we talking between the two?
The CBA indicates that we would have traffic back on the bridge with repair in 2022. And the quick replace idea, HNTB's estimated schedule, which is the best information we have today, would indicate an early 2023 replacement or return to service date. Obviously, and this is true of all of the options, less so with repair, but we aren't at full design for any of these. And so it is, we're guessing for all of these.
So can I ask when, I mean, I heard the engineer last week say first quarter of 23 for the replace, but when you say repair in 2022, which month or quarter are you talking?
I think it's mid 2022. Greg, do you remember?
It is. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Herbold, I saw a message from you that your question has either been answered or you're
Correct. Thank you.
Or you betcha. Any other folks who wish to comment?
Looks like Dan Austin would like to.
Great.
I just have a real quick question for SDOT. Between the repair and the rapid replacement, which one has the higher risk analysis towards a delay in not being delivered on time?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any question that the higher risk is the thing that's designed the least. So there's no doubt that would be rapid replacement. I will also say that the rapid replacement is not like an unknown thing that no one's ever attempted before. It's a technology that exists in the world. They did it at Lake Champlain. So it's not a unicorn and it's not unique. And as Barbara Moffett mentioned, replacing bridges rapidly is a thing that gets done. And we have examples of that in Minnesota as well as in Genoa. So I just want to note that permitting is going to be no doubt about it for anything beyond the very simplest repair. Permitting is always going to be the biggest risk when it comes to any kind of transportation project like this.
Heather, I just have I apologize if I was flippant with the unicorn comment earlier.
It's all right.
The unicorn in
No,
that.
you don't.
Dan, here's I'm pretty flippant on the regular, so you don't have to feel bad about that at
Yeah,
all.
no, I believe in the construction technology. The EIS is the elusive piece that I just can't
Sure.
get my head to. But
Sure.
I don't believe that the construction technology is not there. So I apologize if I came off too
No, don't worry about it.
much
all
myself
good.
on that. All right,
All
thanks.
good. Good.
Deb Barker.
Could I add up before we go on to off of Dan's comment, just to let you know that from a TAP perspective, when we were looking at Alt4 in the CBA and the preliminary concepts that came out, and then the rapid replacement was shown to us, one of the things we didn't know, would it be seismically isolated, have between the superstructure and substructure. Some of the considerations and concerns that we had with the original concepts that were put out have already been addressed with respect to this rapid replacement. So they're cutting down the heights of the piers. They're putting isolation bearings in there so that you don't have the superstructure loads from a seismic event go to the substructure. So they've already been able to address some of the things that we thought, well, how is this going to work? There's logistics that need to be worked out on that, but it is far beyond what we had originally considered, and it's very intriguing and appealing for an Alt4 concept.
Thank you, Barbara. Deb Barker.
Yes, Greg Izzo, I just want to get back in case you didn't see my earlier question. And this is a question under the 4F resources on page 21 of the CBA, and it references things that are applicable to the 4F criterion. I was surprised to not see Pigeon Point Park in this, and I didn't know if that was an omission or it didn't count. I had had the opportunity the other night I was trying to find the replaced Rolf Neslin statue or bust, and I went through Pigeon Point Park and thought, oh, look how close this is, spitting distance, literally, to the on-ramp to the West Seattle Bridge. So just wanted to flag that for you. And did anyone get to see Rolf's bust back?
Saw the picture.
So I wanted to see the damn thing. So I'll let you know at our next meeting how good he looks. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was that something that they missed or just didn't know about it, or?
For that particular site, it could very well be, although we have looked at the habitat on the structure itself and some of what we have to consider. And what we've found is that mostly everything habitat related is state regulated, which is a much different situation than if it was federally regulated. So for the immediate habitat that's on the bridge, that's what we looked at.
This is park property versus habitat. So, okay.
But I don't believe, I'd have to look, but I'm not confident we considered what was in the park at this point.
I just thought it would be, I didn't see it listed and knew how close it was. So thanks.
I definitely have it noted as something we will have to look into. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Laura Radford, to be followed by Jen Temple.
Thanks. So I just wanted to kind of quantify my response to the mayor. I just received a lot of information from our board of directors, and it's just important to note that the business owners are leaning more towards repair for just, I think, the simple reason that we don't have a lot of information about the rapid replacement. So really the message is, and I'll write an email with kind of a summary about not only the board, but also all of the merchants from the junction. The message really is get traffic moving as quickly as we can. And whether it is repair or rapid replacement, I think they would be happy with both. But the concern is having no traffic going in and out of West Seattle until 2026. So I just wanted to make sure I clarify that it's the ability to move traffic back and forth from West Seattle back to Seattle that is more the concern than it is repair or rapid replacement.
Thank you. Jen Temple.
Hi, thanks again. And just to Heather's comment about Genoa and Minneapolis, or the bridge there. Having followed this, even though I joined more recently on this task force, I have followed this conversation since March 23rd. As a new homeowner, a year and 2 months in West Seattle, we tuned into that very first town hall. I have watched almost all of these meetings before now. I had a great conversation with Deb, fantastic. I got involved very early on with this group. And I think one of the reasons why the rapid replacement feels like a unicorn is because we heard early on that we aren't Genoa and we aren't Minneapolis. And that was messaging that came from SDOT. And so now to suddenly be told that we could be like them, that's what makes it feel like a unicorn and why it's hard to believe.
Yeah, can I address that?
Yeah.
Early on, the question was, why can't we just flip immediately to that? Both Genoa and I-35 West, they had federal money like the next day. We didn't have federal money flowing in the next day. Seriously, the federal government in Italy was like, here's the money. So I think this is a different concept. It's still going to require us to put the money together. It's still going to require the community to be willing to go on a fast track to replace it. But you guys, that's in your hands, right? We got to get the political will in order, and we got to get the community will in order. So that's what that is. Jen, thanks.
If I could just add something quickly to this, I just wanted to add that our goal with the rapid span replacement is to avoid in-water work. And that's what's very attractive about this alternative, is that it's going to be a lighter structure. And we're hoping that there's less improvements, strengthening that we would need to do to the foundations, in which case we could avoid in-water work, which is often a complication with permitting. So just wanted to mention that's one of the attractive parts about this rapid span.
Thank you, Greg. We are coming to the end of our time today. I'll turn it over to Pauline in a second for closing remarks. I want to thank you all again for the very engaged conversation that we have experienced today. I think the mayor got a good sense of the breadth of work and blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into this over the last several months. We will be looking for your written comments. We want to be able to provide that to the mayor so that as she's making this decision over the next few days or couple of weeks, she has access to your thoughts directly. I would ask you to try and keep it short. I know that that's a hard thing to do, but if we give her a packet that's like this, she's going to go through it. If we give her a packet like this, she'll still, I'm sure, go through it. But your work has meant a lot. We've already affected, I think, this project and certainly the mitigation of this bridge closure. I think we have given voice to our community in an important way, and there'll be work to do after this decision to make sure that whatever time, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, or 9 or 10 years, depending on which option she does pick, that we are mitigating it and mitigating the effects of it as completely as we possibly can. Paulina?
I think you said it all. My only addition is please vote and please wear your masks and encourage others to do it. Thank you. Michael, please walk us through the next steps. And I thank you again for everyone participation today.
Absolutely wonderful to have a little bit more space for just conversation, reflection, and a little bit opportunity to feed off each other, as difficult as that can be on a Zoom call. So just the last bit of logistics for me, flagging for everyone as we're thinking through busy November and December calendars as they fill up. we currently have calendar invites out right now for November the 18th and December the 2nd. And flagging for folks that there could be a little squish in there, depending on where we stand with additional conversations that might be necessary, as articulated by this group and in consultation with your co-chairs, but also in conversation with the mayor, and as we work through the many things that are just over the horizon in less than a week in particular. So that's it for me. And if there's any last little bits from Mayor Nichols or Paulina, otherwise we can give folks a whopping 8 minutes back.
And the mayor wants each of you to be among the first to know what her decision is. So it is very possible that we will, between now and the 18th, contact you for an announcement or some other way of finding out what her decision has been, so that we can then keep that in mind when we meet again as a full group on the 18th. So vote early, vote once, and be safe between now
Yeah,
and
and when we say vote, we mean vote for elections, not for the bridge
I'm
replace.
yeah, the vote
Just
level.
confirming that. Yeah, and praying for lots of wisdom for the mayor to make the right decision. Thank you, everyone.